Welcome, guys, to another Prowler podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have a really exciting guest on with us, Jay Wellborn. He comes with multiple stops across the NCAA levels, all the way from Division One to Division Three levels. So he's going to bring incredible recruiting insight from the coaching side of things, and he's also had one stop at the JUCO level. And this conversation is going to be bound to, with full of wisdom, stories, and valuable advice for anyone interested in the recruiting process, but also for young coaches to hear, because he got to learn from one of the greats at Sanford. Coach Jimmy Tillette. And as everybody knows, he did unbelievable things at Sanford back in the day and kind of put him on the map of what we know Sanford basketball is today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jay as he introduces himself a little bit, and then we'll jump into the first segment tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Wellborn, currently unemployed coach. If anybody needs an assistant coach out there, perfectly willing. But in my free time, I look at all offenses throughout college basketball. That's kind of my background, is in the offensive side of things, especially in the Princeton system. Now, as we all know, it's kind of infiltrated every level of basketball and is in virtually every system. Aspects of it is in every system that we come in contact with, or we see on TV every night that's played, especially in these playoffs. We've seen a ton of it in various capacities. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. I've been at, like you said, I was at Sanford for 14 years under Coach Tillette. And Mike Morris, who was the women's head coach there, also won some championships with him being the women's coach and taking them using the Princeton system, and then all his recruiting knowledge as well. He was a heck of a recruiter and could reach kids in a unique way himself. And then Paul Kelly as well was there, who is now the head coach. Well, was the head coach at De La Salle in New Orleans and won a couple of state championships there. And then Lee Burgess, who was at Brevard College, just set the NCAA Division III field goal percentage mark for this season, running the stuff and his own deviation of it. And then Derek Jones, who's in Louisiana, Baton Rouge area, won a couple of state titles there, is now at Catholic High. So I was then Mike Maker, who was at Williams College. He was at Michigan after he left Sanford, but he ended up at Williams College and took them to a couple of Final Fours in the Division III level. I think he played for one title there as well. So I've been blessed to be around some great coaching staffs, and was able to learn from some of the best. So it's great.
No, that's awesome. Always learning from the best. It's like learning from the Nick Saban nowadays, right?
No doubt.
Look at that coaching tree that's been created out of that one. A lot of greats have came out of that one, and a lot of greats will continue to come out of it. So, it's always good to have that mentor in your back pocket at a young age, because it helps shape a young coach ultimately for the long run. So, but with that being said, we're going to kind of jump into that Princeton offense, from the jersey to the league pretty much, because as you said a minute ago, it is being utilized as some variation across the whole NBA nowadays. So how the Princeton offense reshaped Monterey basketball is pretty much what this segment will be about on this podcast. And first question I want to kind of pitch to you is, Pete Carroll, who kind of invented the Princeton offense, is often credited with bringing that structure and art to what is previously raw athleticism, right? And what do you think had his system so uniquely, when it first emerged, kind of created?
Well, it emerged over a 40-year span, so it's kind of difficult to pin it down to one thing. But what I will say, and I randomly I came across this YouTube video of him doing an interview about how he developed it and how it grew. And basically, he wanted to be different from everyone in his league that he was playing against. And he loved the Celtics. So he would watch them religiously, and he wanted to do some empty post stuff, because he wasn't sure that he could always have a post player down low that could just be dominant and go get him a bucket. So he started toying around with stuff, and he's like, well, I like this action, but then I like this action that this team does over here. And for me, that's what made his system unique as it was being developed, is he wanted to figure out ways to run one system into another, so that it never stopped, and it would always turn itself over and over and over again until they could get the best shot that they could get on that possession. Back then, they didn't have the shot clock, so people associate it with a more slow tempo, but that was not necessarily by design. He just was trying to not turn the ball over and still score. as it's moved on, it's gotten faster and faster for various reasons. But now the slow down pace isn't necessarily part of it as much. It can be if you want it to be, but that's what makes it multiple. But he layered on layer on layer. He had some Kentucky shuffle cut in there with some of the Celtic stuff, and just kept layering it, and then it kind of became its own. Once he mastered those things, he started to develop his own ideas about things and ways that he wanted to do things, and that's the way it developed for him. And then 40 years later, 50 years later, when he got out of the game, we're still using it today, 20 years after that. So it's been around about 70 years. So it's obviously a pretty successful system.
No, it is for sure. And if you look at the Ivy League, they're generally a slower paced league, right? They slow down the ball, take high percentage shots and everything. So I feel like it's still got a very influential level at certain schools, as we see this past year, the SEC, they love to play the high tempo up pace, but they still kind of spread the ball out to the wings, like in that Princeton offense they ultimately created. So I think there's still variations used, it just in different moderations. But what I found interesting in that article you sent, after I read fully through it, is how it was interpreted to so many leagues. So why do you think it got carried over into the WNBA even, but also NBA?
I think that it carried over because of the fact that it emphasizes fundamentals. It's also less about dribbling and more about cutting and spacing. And because of that, it tends to cut down on your turnovers, especially if you can recruit good decision makers, people that are intelligent and can learn your reads. I also had a buddy tell me that as he was scouting it, he said basically Princeton, unlike other motion, breaks it down into you got an A or B decision, and it's based upon the way the guy's guarding you. Whereas other motion, you may have A, B, C, D, E decisions to make. Well, if you only got one or A or B to do, and that's what you're going to do, then it cuts down. You don't freeze as much, and it allows you to play faster and with more certainty in your movements and cuts, which also eliminates turnovers. Yep. But I think people wanted to get away from all the just stand around, let one man dribble, take them one-on-one, and go to work as much. And more freedom of movement, especially once the freedom of movement got put into college basketball and now pro basketball, where you can't just, chuck somebody coming through the lane and stuff like that. I think it really opened it up for the game to be more spread and more prettier, elegant is the word I would use, a more elegant game than the grit and grind that it was, in the mid 80s and mid 90s and that 10-year period.
Yeah, I miss that grit and grind a little bit,
No doubt.
That physicality, because now in the NBA we see a lot of flopping, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of became the face of the league because, not to be a hater, but LeBron has perfected the flopping. LeBron would have never survived in the 80s era if he played like that. So MJ was very crafty at that time. He liked to spread the floor a little bit as well. But I think a guy that we can look at the NBA level now that loves to spread the floor and has really perfected it is Steph Curry. We've seen him do it at Davidson and shine bright with not much help, right? But he knew how to spread the ball to the corners ultimately and spread the court so he could get that open shot. And he still does it at the Warriors, even with the less help he had this year. So, but speaking of that, how do you think the offense changed as it moved up the ranks, and eventually became into the NBA? Did you see any moderations? And can you guys speak in detail what those moderations were? And was that due to the talent level, you think?
Well, I think the moderation came. I mean, obviously he took it originally from the NBA. He took it from the Celtics, brought it down to the college level, and really perfected it there. And I think the reason that it was slower to begin with is just the uncertainty of them trying to learn it. But obviously the Celtics knew it. They had played together forever. They didn't have the free agency back then that they do today. So there was more commonality and more, just experience in it to be able to get it done collectively as a group. Today, we don't necessarily have that. So things have definitely changed now. Also with the 24-second clock, there's less people that are running the true motion of it where it turns itself over and over and over again. There are a couple, Mike Brown is very well known for having ran Princeton, when he was with the Lakers and then most recently with the Kings. Obviously, when Pete Carril retired from college coaching, he went to the Kings and installed it there. And that's when we had those great Lakers battles in the playoffs with Chris Webber and Shaq and Kobe and all those guys, where it came down to, second shots, like last second shots every year. That doomed one team or the other. Obviously, I think the Lakers won every time. But during that time period, it was fun for me to watch because I'm watching a lot of Princeton stuff along with the triangle stuff. And when I was at Huntington, those were two offenses that we married. We ran Princeton and triangle together as a cohesive offensive unit. So it was really fun for me to watch those two go against each other. In a very in a series, basically back-to-back years. I think may have been 3 years in there, but I think that as the league progressed and became faster and more of a flow system, I think that the offense translated in different ways for different teams. Obviously, Steve Kerr coming from the Spurs did a great job of intricate. Of especially the point offense and split action and things of that nature within the offense. I think they did a great job using the talent that they had, and they were a heck of a passing team. That's what made the Spurs elite back when they were, destroying the Heat in the finals after Ray Allen hit the miracle shot to beat him the year before. Was the fact that they passed the ball so well. They knew where everybody was. Their bigs were elite passers. The ball moved faster than you can dribble it. And so that made them play very, very fast, especially in the half court. So Steve was on that team. Kerr was on that team, and he also came out of the triangle system with Phil Jackson as well. Mm-hmm. Well, then he gets the head coaching job with Golden State, and it's not like they were a bad team before he got the job. They were good. Mark Jackson just hadn't been able to get him over the hill. So he inherits two of the best shooters of all time, and he installs some of the actions, especially the split type stuff, getting Curry open without the ball. All of that stuff is Princeton concepts. Maybe, it may take you a minute to see it and the different variations that he does of it, but ultimately that's the same type of action that Princeton's using, just at a very, very high level with different screeners and different screening angles. And it's so much to guard and so much to teach that it became very, very difficult to guard, especially when you put, the second best shooter in NBA history on the same team and one of the best defenders and rebounders who could also pass the crap out of the ball. With him, you got that triumphant there, and that's a pretty good core concept to build around for the next several years, like they did.
No, I totally agree. And I feel like I'm not a big basketball person. I never played basketball in college, but I feel like having a key big guy that knows how to pass the ball like that, like a Tim Duncan. I feel like a guy that's kind of like Tim Duncan nowadays is Nikola Jokic. He runs a offense kind of like a point guard, but from down in the paint, and he really spreads the floor due to that. And that's been beneficial. We've seen him accomplish 3 championships or 2 championships.
Joker's got one.
One, okay, but that's another person that has been able to accomplish it, due to the scheme he runs.
Absolutely, yeah. He would be the perfect Princeton P or Princeton. I call him a hybrid now. I don't call him a post anymore because, to be honest with you, that hurt recruiting. So we went away from using the post as a concept and as a hybrid, so that they knew that they would be on the perimeter. We're not just going to stick you down there. As a matter of fact, in Princeton, I was just talking with the coach the other night, and he asked me why I use letters, and I get that question a lot instead of numbers for positions. Well, it's because they're all interchangeable. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, what's this H you got out there? And I'm like, well, it's really a hybrid because I want them to know when I'm recruiting them that you are going to step away from the goal. You're not going to be down there. And really what position you play, quote unquote position, is determined by who you can guard and not necessarily where you're going to be on the floor or how it's going to be, because you may be at any of the 4 perimeter spots on the court. And then we'll have a couple of guys that are designated specifically as H's so that they can have they can know what decisions they're going to have to make when they're out there.
No, for sure. So, speaking of that, which team do you think it exemplifies the Princeton offense the best right now at the college level? Have you seen one that really flows the best, like you saw back in the 80s?
At the college level,
Yeah.
the closest I've seen, and I just recently came across them. I mean, it's so difficult to say because I haven't seen every college. Several colleges are running point stuff. They're running chin stuff. They're running those type actions. The person that I've come across most recently that's running it at a highly efficient and effective rate is Nick Pascua down at Converse College in South Carolina. It may be Converse University, so I don't know if it's college university, but Converse in South Carolina. They set several records this year offensively for their school, and we're really, really high analytically in almost everything in points per game or points per possession, and all of that. And he's doing a heck of a job. I ran across him at a coaching clinic and was very, very impressed with what he's doing. I think he's got the right idea. They play very, very fast. And he's incorporated stuff like that I'd kind of phased out or I'd seen phased out. Like we used to back pin UCLA, the post, back into the post when he was on the perimeter. And that's kind of, you don't see anybody else doing that now. Well, he's figured out a way to do that in a fast way to get that dude a quick, easy bucket. Just some innovative ideas. And then you can always go with Lenny Acuff. Everything he does offensively is incredibly brilliant. He's obviously Division I now at Sanford, but he's been at Lipscomb and was a legend at UAH, winning over 600 games there. But those guys, I mean, they're brilliant guys out there that are doing some really innovative things. And that's the other thing about the coaching tree is like once you mastered the basics of the offense, everybody kind of branches out, and the next thing you know, like people that I coached with, like Lee Burgess at Brevard, he's doing amazing things. He obviously led the country in field goal percentage this year. That's an amazing feat. I mean, that just doesn't happen by accident. It's by design. And he was able to do that, but he focuses on an entirely different section of the motion than I focus on. So it was very, very interesting. But then, the last 5 years I was in college, we led. We were high in field goal percentage and high in 3-point field goal percentage, but we led all D2 and D3 in fouls drawn per game and free throws attempted per game. We were over 30 a game for the last 5 years I was in college. And again, I think it's because of what you're focusing on within your offensive system. But it's just interesting that it can all come from the same place, being taught by the same person, and then you get out and you make it your own is what I call it. And when I'm recruiting kids, I always tell them, or when they first come in and they're trying to understand what I'm trying to get them to do, I'm like, look, guys, this thing's malleable, okay? I'm giving you a skeleton of the offense that we're going to run, but you guys are the muscles. Y'all make it move, okay? So whatever you guys become good at and show me we can do, that's where we're going to gear ourselves toward. So they eventually can take some ownership in it themselves, and I want them to take ownership in it. My dream and my best teams have always been where at the end of the year I'm barely calling or suggesting anything. They're doing it all on the fly by themselves because they're the ones making the decisions. I'm never going to make a pass out there. I'm never going to make a shot. None of that I'm ever going to do. I'm going to make suggestions from the side of the court is what I'm going to do. And then they've got to go out and execute it. And then, we got some quick hitters and stuff that people haven't seen for late game situations. But in general, man, I want them to have control of it. And I think that's what's unique about the offense. And I think that's the direction I see most Princeton teams going nowadays is they want to have less control where they're barking out orders and more decision-making on the floor by their players.
Yeah, no, that for sure. You want a point guard that can kind of architect it, what to design and what to put in.
That's what made Jason Kidd so good when they were with the Nets and made back-to-back finals. I mean, Princeton, think about that. If Princeton if the Nets beat the Lakers those two times they made back-to-back finals in the early 2000s, if that were to have happened, then Princeton would have really taken off. It already did, but think about, you got a champion that's beaten the triangle, and then now, they can really take off and do it. But that's what the Nets ran back in the day, and they ran a true form of Princeton, like old school. You put out the Pete Carril, tapes from the 60s and 70s, and that's the stuff that they were running. They were just running it at a really high level and really, really fast.
Correct. No, that's correct. And as we've all seen, the game has got faster and faster nowadays. So it's going to change for sure. But speaking of that, and this is an interesting topic, because I always like to ask previous coaches is how does recruiting shape, even though with the Princeton principles, do you look for those players still, or do you try to shape it to a player that you might be able to modify more?
Well, I think what most coaches in the Princeton style system are looking for is IQ, number one. You got to be able to learn. You got to want to learn. You got to be curious. You've got to, be able to retain information, because it is a lot that we're throwing at you. Okay. Then number two, I think you're looking for offensive ability. I think most Princeton coaches, now I'm not speaking for all here by any means, but I think most Princeton coaches will tell you we can teach defense. We can't necessarily teach you offensive instincts. Okay. But we can teach you the defensive instincts and kind of put you in the right position where you can be successful on that side of the ball. But offensively, we can't necessarily teach you how to make a jump shot every time, things of that nature. We can help you. We can improve it for sure. We can improve your skill work on offense and things of that nature. But if you don't have the instinct of where the ball should go, then it makes it a little bit more difficult for you to know what's happening in Princeton and this offense in general. That being said, generally, if you've got good offensive instincts, you're also going to know defensively where you can cheat a play, where the ball is supposed to go and beat it there. So that does tend to make you a better defender as well down the road as we develop those instincts and get them going. And then character, because you need them to be accountable for what their job is. So we look for that as well. And yeah, those are the three main things I would say.
Yeah, and you talk about all those, and especially the IQ and the discipline. I feel like Carroll benefited a lot being at Princeton, because those kids that had to get accepted in there had to have a high IQ off the court, right? So they're not just your standard athlete. They know a lot more than your typical athletes do, so they can interpret a lot of things at once.
That being said, I was told the same thing about when I first became a junior college head coach at Snead, that I was going to have a difficult time getting the kids to learn it, and that was not my experience at all. I think we undersell the IQ of kids and players, especially today's player. I think they watch so much more basketball, even if it's just highlights. I think they have access to watching it and see it more often and have been around it, whether it's AAU, high school, whatever. They've been in so many different kinds of offenses and defenses that they tend to have a better feel for it than they ever have, and a better retention of things than they ever have. So I found it to be easier now to teach it than it's ever been, and to implement it than it's ever been, because of that. Even no matter what level you're at, just depends on how much they can retain as to how much which section of the offense you put in and mesh it together.
For sure, and you got different style of play, right?
Yes.
So you might not have that big guy at a certain school, so you got to tailor it to, hey, we got to utilize more of our guards and wings more, right? So it depends on what kind of personnel you have. Ultimately, just like in football, it depends on what personnel you have and what package you can put on the court that best benefits you, right? But wrapping up this segment of this portion, if Pete Carril was coaching today, what adjustments do you think he would make currently?
Well, it's tough to speak for a legend like him and to know exactly what he would do, but what I can say, what I can speak to is what my feel is for the way the game is going, and I think it's got to be more like what the guys are doing at out of the Nate Oates tree of coaching, especially at the collegiate level. While that's not through Princeton, One of my goals is over this summer is to kind of intertwine the things I think work best in that system with what I know of Princeton and try to mesh those two things together. Just because, I mean, it's been proven at every level at this point that the Nate Oates branch of spacing and movement is something that needs to be incorporated because he's won everywhere he's been at all the different levels. And I think that's probably the next evolution of the offense, but it's very difficult to predict. We may have the exact opposite happen where it snaps back and it becomes, more like the 60s and 70s where it is more structured. Who knows? But my feel is because of how the offense in the world is shaping and the bigger college basketball spectrum is shaping up is that it's going to be a more free flowing, let's get out and run. We set all kinds of my last 5 years coaching at both Tusculum and Belhaven. For those years that I was there, we set offensive standards that were off the charts. We broke all kinds of school records at both schools. And it was because we were getting out and going way more. If I had to go back and do it over again, even when I was at Snead, I played way too slow. I would be way faster, push the ball up the court. I would still not want to turn the ball over. You still don't want to do that, but I want to play fast enough that we put pressure on the defense getting back in transition, because transition defense is one of the most difficult things in the world to do. You can get a lot of easy buckets that way. I mean, you see the Pacers just running the Knicks out of the gym most nights, not every night, but most nights, because they're just quicker. They're just getting up the floor quicker and getting easy buckets. And I think that's where the game's going ultimately. But there's a place for Princeton in there because of the spacing and the movement of the players without the ball, where everybody's going. So I think there's, and especially once it gets into the half court, you're cutting so hard, you're moving so fast, and you don't know necessarily where the cutters are going to go because, like I said, every Princeton coach emphasizes different things, and you can get different movements and cuts based upon that. That's different from what anybody else is doing. And that's another thing that I like to try to do when I watch Princeton style teams is look for the differences, what they do differently and how it works and why they're doing it that way, so that maybe I can change what I'm doing to make it even better. And I think that's where you see the evolution.
No, for sure. And that's a great point with Nate Oates, because Nate Oates has done a tremendous job at every school he's been at, and specifically at Alabama. He has been in quite to get over that hump to get that national championship ring, but he's got close. And it's been due to the spacing he has created. And one of the ones that I remember, lately is Braxton Miller. Braxton Miller was one of the most, not Braxton Miller. Well, am I correct on that? Or
Brandon Miller
is the space that he would create just by himself. And that was due to the Nate Oates kind of idea of how to play. So that's a great point. I never even thought about that kind of interpretation of the Princeton offense. So,
well, I'll tell you, I got to watch in Wallace State Hansville, Drew Wilson, one of my first assistant of all time when I was at Snead. He's had a heck of a career. He's won everywhere he's been. Once he left me, he went to Faulkner, won championships there. Then he went to Ark State and helped rebuild that program. Then he got on with the guy that just left for South Florida. I can't think of his name. Anyway, he was with him for a couple of years, and then now he's the assistant over at Wallace Hansville. And they won the league this year, running all the Nate Oates stuff. But I got to watching them, and I could already see things that I could take from them, and concepts and ideas that I could take from them and put in to the Princeton flow system of things, where it would be an easy marriage to make out of some of their formations and ideas that they're doing. Now, I don't know it intimately enough yet. I hope to be able to do that well enough. But I did see some things that I think could work. But I think that's where the innovation comes, is coaches just seeking out new ways of doing things and seeing what was working elsewhere. And that's what Pete Carril did. I mean, that was his genius. He took the best of a ton of different systems and smushed them all together and figured out a way to make them all roll into one. And that's really what it is. And you're right about the personnel thing. You can vary it based upon your personnel every year. It doesn't have to be the same. No. We probably got too regimented in it up until my last year at Sanford. We were probably too regimented in A to B to C instead of branching. Now, last year we did branch out and developed our own kind of stuff. It became even more of our own once I got to Snead and got my own head coaching position and was able to make my own calls. I really developed as a coach and grew then just from putting things together that I liked. But I didn't know at the time that I was doing exactly what Pete Carrill had done from the very beginning, which is marrying what you like best into one cohesive unit.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. But that's a great topic for sure. And a lot of knowledge to be learned there. And it opened my eyes up to a part of the game I never even realized when you sent me that. So I always love doing this and learning more on the podcast. But with that being said, the next segment is, talk about more of the guy you learned from Tillette and the legacy and lessons you learned from him. And the first point I want to hit on is, Coach Tillette led Sanford to unprecedented heights, including their first NCAA tournament appearance, which I never even realized. I never realized they didn't make an NCAA tournament before that. So how did his leadership and achievements influence your approach to your coaching style now, and what ultimately led you to Sneak State?
Well, I'll start with this, and I don't want to make this too long, but this is kind of how it worked. Jimmy was a part of a group of coaches in the New Orleans area that all played, coached, and grew up together. Billy Kennedy, that was at Texas A&M for a long time, he was a part of that group. Dwayne Rebo, who's still in basketball. He was as of last year. I don't know if he went with Bucky to Texas A&M or not. But he coached Bucky, who was at Sanford, who's now at Texas A&M. Paul Kelly was coached by Jimmy, and Richard Williams was involved there. John Brady, who's the all-time assist leader at Belhaven, since you're a Belhaven guy, who ended up being, the head coach of LSU and taking them to the Final Four, just got inducted into the LSU Hall of Fame maybe a month ago, maybe not that long ago. But anyway, all those guys grew up together, coaching against each other and knowing each other. So when Jimmy ended up, he was a fast-paced coach, press you all the time, get up in you in high school, had like the number 3 team in the country his last year at the high school level. Well, Richard Williams needed somebody to come in and run his offense. So he had Jimmy come up and work camp. And on the first day of camp, he offered Jimmy the restricted earnings coaching job to be the Mississippi State offensive coordinator. And so that's the way he ended up at the Division I level at all. I think he told me he was 42 maybe when that happened. I think that's what he told me. I could have that wrong. But anyway, so it was later in his career at that point in time. So he does that for a couple of years. Then Brady gets the head job at Sanford and takes Jimmy with him to run the offense. Well, at the time, they were 5-out motion group, which was, you're just moving, cutting constantly guys through the lane, screening for each other, knowing who can do what. And they had a lot of success. They won a couple of division championships there, but they couldn't get over the hump in the tournament. So then when Brady took LSU and Jimmy got the Sanford job, he was looking for something that would help get them over the hump and win 3 games in 3 days. He had the youngest team in Division I coming in, and so he knew he had time to build some stuff there. So he decided he was going to run Princeton. So he went and flew up to Princeton, met with them, and they didn't want to help him at first. But he stuck around a couple of days and let them go through his notes. And they're like, okay, you've done your work. You had over 300 notes that you had made because he didn't play golf. So that's the only that was his hobby in the off season, was to break down offenses. And they let him in on the secret. Well, forever, nowadays you can get Princeton anywhere. You can find it anywhere. Everybody's selling it and trying to make a buck off of it. Jimmy wasn't like that. He was told that, you're the gatekeeper here. You don't give it away. You don't sell it. And so we didn't do that. None of us did that. I mean, it wasn't ours to give away because Pete Carrill is the one that designed it. He's the one that made it. If anybody's going to give it away and make money off of it, it's got to be him. Well, then once he started producing videos, everybody and the brother started producing videos, and it came out and got proliferated through college basketball, or through all levels of basketball at that point. But his leadership style was one where he empowered those around him. And that's one of the ways that he influenced me the most. Is I tried to hire people that were way smarter than me and be around people that were way smarter than me so that I could learn from them. And that's one of the best things. Mitch Cole, who's the associate head coach at Texas A&M now, he's the one I said that, we led the country in fouls drawn per game for those 5 years in Division II and Division III. And he's one of the ones that made the subtle suggestion that instead of, I used to back cut everybody from the 45, coming over the top of a ball screen. Anytime we came over the top of a ball screen, I would back cut there. Mm-hmm. Well, I kept noticing when I was coaching is that I'm really moving another defender and an offensive guy down there in the way of the driver. I'm just putting him right in front of him. Now, yes, we got that bounce pass down there sometimes, but I'm really making it more difficult for the driver to get all the way to the rim. Well, he suggested, why don't I flare that guy? And so I started tweaking with that and playing with that. And the next thing I know, that driver coming out of the corner, coming over the top of the ball screen, he's got no help because they're negotiating the screen on the other side of the floor. Their heads are turned, and it's one-on-one. And then you find defenders feeling like they're on an island, and they start panicking. And next thing you know, you're getting fouls at the wazoo. And so that really changed the way. But I wouldn't have known that had I not been willing to listen to someone else and listen to him. And Jimmy was like that. He empowered us to bring our ideas to him. Even me, when I was, a lowly manager, he would listen to me talk about offense or skill development and things of that nature, and it really took it hard. Now, did we implement everything? No. But he showed me that's the way you lead and let people grow, is by giving them an outlet where they can do that. And I think I've been good at doing that with the people that I've worked with. It's way more of a collaborative effort. And I think I've done a good job at listening to my assistants as best I could. Now, maybe when I was first starting out, I was gung-ho that, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how it's going to be. But I do think over the years I've gotten better about that based upon him. And obviously his achievements speak for themselves. I mean, he's won in all different kind of ways, whether it was, at the high school level, fast breaking all the time, up in you pressing, or if it's, matchup zone in the half court, we're going to guard the last third, make you chunk it over us. We're going to get the rebound. We're going to go down. We're going to walk it up the floor. We're going to use all 35 at the time of the shot clock and then shoot it with 3 seconds to go. And that's going to be how we play. He's won it all different ways. And so those are the biggest things with his leadership style and his achievements.
No, for sure. And you hit it on the point is when you're a coach, you got to listen to everyone. It's just like when you're a team, it doesn't take one person to win everything. It takes a team to win everything, a team to work together, and that chemistry. So, when you're a coach and you have that chemistry with each other to feed off of, it creates a better room. That's why we've seen, some of the greats, Phil Jackson and several others, Roy Williams is a prime example in North Carolina of how he had so much success for so long. It's because of that chemistry he kept within the coaching staff and within the team, which fed over in the team, right? When you have that good coaching staff that, breed off each other and communicate their ideas, in a communication way that's not confrontational, it creates a better environment for the team, period. So that's a great way to put it. So, but, talking about that, what key lessons did you learn from him that now you try to pass on to your coaching staff? I know you've been out of the coaching staff for a little while now, but at your stops, how did you try to leverage that to the most?
Well, number one, I try to steal from as many people as I can that I'm working with. I want to know what they know and hopefully know it at least decently well as to how they know it. Oftentimes in the situation I was in as a head coach, I'm more instructing them so that they know what I want taught. And so that I didn't get to glean as much from them as I would like to have. But what I did when they did speak up and I did give them a minute to talk and learn from them, I think that I've kept that stuff and utilized it as I could based upon my teams that I've been allowed to coach since. At all my stops since I was at Sanford, I've been in charge of the offense for the most part. Done a little bit of the defense depending on what we wanted to do that given year. Sometimes I was in charge of both, just depending on the year. But listening to those guys and hearing their I always want to hide. I don't want yes men on my staffs. I want people that are going to challenge me and my ideas and why do I want it done this way? And because that helps make me better, and it makes me a better teacher, so I can explain it better to the kids. Because ultimately, if my coaches are having those questions, I know the kids are having those questions because they can't see beyond the first layer. And if I got my coaches seeing the second and third layer, and they're still confused or uncertain, then it's on me to listen to them and see if there's something to it that I need to tweak or change to make everything better. What was the rest of your question? I'm sorry.
I
got you. Yeah. So I think what I've done for the players is I've given them, and what I used to tell my guys at the JUCO level especially is, if you can come in here and master this, there's nothing that you're going to be faced with in your collegiate career or your career playing after this that you're not going to be able to understand, because it teaches them how to play. It teaches you how to play the game and share the ball with other people. You can, like I had a kid that averaged around 25, 28 his sophomore year with me. So you can have teams that have guys like that, but most of the time your best teams are teams where, everybody averages between 18 and 10, and you've got 7 or 8 dudes that are doing that. And because everybody's sharing the ball, it's moving, it's going where it's supposed to go, the right guy taking the right shot at the right time. All those things are occurring in your better teams is what I found. But you can curtail it if you only got, and that's one of the reasons I think it's great at the high school level. You can make it where if you do have that 1 or 2 dudes that you need to get the ball to, you can get it to them in space, and they're able to move it and get by. And that's another reason that the fouling thing becomes prolific in Princeton stuff, especially the faster you play, is that you're putting that defender on an island. And usually it's an island that he's not comfortable guarding on. And it almost initiates the flight or fight deal where either I'm going to run from this and you're going to blow by me. I'm going to stand straight up and boom, you're by me, whether it's with a cut or whether it's with the dribble or whatever. Or, you're going to fight and put your hands down and try to stop me, and it's an instant foul. You can't put 2 hands on people. And so you're battling for that. But I think I think those type things help the players know that they can compete no matter where they go once they're out of the system and on with life. And it teaches to rely on other people. We all know that, any success that's done isn't done alone. It takes everybody. And so I think it teaches that just in the game of basketball in and of itself.
No, for sure. And, you hit it. We talked about a little bit earlier that team chemistry always goes further in no matter what sport or tournament you're in, and, I grew up here in Memphis, and we're kind of known for our street ball, right? Everybody has the highlight of that one player on the team that always wants to control the court. And the team I was on in high school, we had that one player. He was a 5-star. He was great, but he always wanted the ball in his hands, which we wanted the ball in his hands, but he didn't understand how to spread it and get open his own self through passing it. And that boils down into ultimately why his college career was cut short, is because he thought it was all about I, and there's no I in a team, right? There's a team, right? And I think that's corporate. I think that's what made the Princeton offense so, appealing to a lot of people, including Tillette at Sanford, is because if you get a team that can flow together and spread the ball, it's going to open up more doors, more cuts, and et cetera down the lane that could ultimately lead to more success, right? Which we've seen from several coaches now that has utilized it. Those teams that have the it man or I man, they don't really function like that. They typically peter out after the first and second round in the NCAA tournament, and same in the playoffs.
Yeah, they get fatigued. Jimmy called it, the grind of an offense versus the glide of the Princeton offense, because it, as everybody else can score around you, it makes it easier for you to get your shot in and of it for yourself. By the way, that reminds me, I wanted to go back to something. You said earlier that Curry didn't have, the cast around him. Yes, he didn't have the cast around him that was like Curry, but they still could have won the SoCon without Curry. They were that good. They were super, super talented. But anyway, you talking about the team movement. The Davidson offense does that as well. It's there are several offenses out there. I'm not wedded to Princeton. This is what I know the best.
Yep.
But again, you try to take the stuff from everybody and smush it together, and that's the beauty of what Princeton is.
No, I agree, and you're right. No, the team that Davidson had that year was, that's the reason they made a run to the Sweet 16,
right?
But Curry is the name that sticks out. But there, as we all know, there's a team behind him that supported him and got him to where he is now.
Absolutely.
And that's what I hate about, not to dive into my soapbox because I'm not a big fan of the transfer portal nowadays, but I feel like that's hurting team chemistry more and more nowadays. We don't see it near as much as we used to, right? We don't see the Cinderella stories anymore, right? We don't see those guys that came together and fought for 3 to 4 years together until their senior year to put themselves on that stage to make a serious run.
Well, what I think you see is guys like Drake this past year.
Yeah,
that I forget how far they went in the NCAA tournament, but they had a heck of a year. But it was the majority D2 guys that had played for him at the D2 for most of their career, and then transferred to the Division I level all together, and then were able to dominate because they had been together so long. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons. I mean, they're obviously super talented. But yes, the transfer portal has hurt the cohesiveness that you can develop with a team for sure. And the fact that you never know if what you're going to have year to year. So it's a 1-year deal, and you're, as a coach, I feel like you're investing into them for that year with all your heart and all your soul, and that's the team you have, and you hope that that's enough to develop some loyalty that you'll retain them. It's very similar to when I was at junior college or when I was at D3. We lost several Division III players to Division II and the higher levels, scholarship levels, because of the fact that they were able to give scholarships and we weren't. So I feel like I've had some access to the transfer portal, even though I haven't necessarily been there. It was beginning its tenure when I got out for a couple of years there. But it's nothing like it is today. But then, like you and I were talking, I haven't seen the latest numbers, but you have so many that transfer out thinking they're going to get a better situation. And you just don't. You end up with 66% or whatever, 60% that end up in a worse situation than they started in when they transferred.
Correct. Not to cut you off, but a prime example is here in Memphis, we have PG Haggerty. Great point guard, great fundamentals, but Penny was not going to pay him what he wanted. So he ultimately walked, right? And now he's at Kansas State after taking a price cut from what he was making here in NIL, which NIL is a totally different situation, a different topic.
Yeah.
But that's a prime example. A lot of players back in the day would have loved to play for Penny Hardaway, especially at his alma mater. Now it's not the case. It's about who can give me the most money, or who can I walk in and make an impact on day one, right? So it's, just like you were saying, and not to cut you off, but it changed the game tremendously. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm hoping the NCAA steps up and makes some guidelines in the coming months, because there's a big push for NCAA to make one transfer window for all sports. Mm-hmm. And I think that will benefit a lot across the board. We'll see a little bit more loyalty return to a program, which I think everybody wants to see ultimately.
Yeah, and I will say this. I do think that it makes recruiting services like you way more valuable, especially for the high school athletes that are coming out, because, talking to my coaching friends, at the collegiate level, they're really not looking at the high school kid necessarily. And so that guy needs an advocate out there for him who can help direct, hey, if you don't get what you want out of the portal, here's who I am, here's what I bring to the table. And help get them noticed even more. And I think that's one of the values that you guys bring, especially with the algorithms that you guys have, to help point them in the right direction to schools that are looking for things like they need, and help direct them as far as they can get follow-ups and know how things are moving along in those those schools' progression of their team because it changes so fast. I mean, shoot, you never know who's going to leave from one moment to the next. It's almost like when I was at Belhaven, we had the COVID rules. Vines was his wife had gotten COVID, so he couldn't come on campus. So I was in charge, and I had recruits on that day. And it was a 2-week span. He wasn't there, but on this particular day, we were preparing for a conference game the next day, and he and I spent 3 hours on the phone while I've got other guys, other players around campus showing these guys campus. And I come in to practice after he and I spend 3 hours on the phone working out a practice plan, and 4 of my 5 starters couldn't practice that day because they had been exposed and they had to wait for their negative test. So now I don't know who I've got for the next day. And that practice plan that I spent 3 hours on just had to go out the window. Well, yep. It's kind of the same thing when it comes to the recruiting portal. You know, you don't know who you're going to have from one moment to the next as a coach. So you always need to have those backups on backups on backups now. And again, I think that's a utility that you guys can provide and help kids with to make sure that you're on those coaches' lists.
No, I'm glad you hit on that, because that's what the Prowler does. That's what we utilize, is we create a database for you inside of our own, database center that we've created. And it pretty much utilizes every single university, each state that you want to pursue. And based off of that, it also is depicted by the new STAR evaluation that we've implemented, because our STAR evaluation is not the same as every, 247 or max preps. Our STAR evaluation is based on how you can develop, because ultimately you might be that Division II guy right now, but you could be that Division I guy. We've seen it with Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl pulls from the Division II level quite often lately. He just pulled a guy this past year from UAH that had a big impact on the Auburn team that, ultimately made a pretty good presence in the
think Cheney, you talking about Cheney Johnson?
Yes.
I think Cheney was there 2 years. I recruited him out of high school. I would have never thought that he would have been playing in the SEC and being pretty dang good. I saw today he can he went ahead and kept his name in the draft. He's the NBA, so great for him. Great kid, by the way. Great kid.
And that's exact stories that the Prowler wants to keep alive, because a lot of players nowadays, due to the transfer portal, due to the dynamics of college sports, they're giving up because they think that window is shut. But they don't realize, especially now with the possible ruling that JUCO doesn't count against your eligibility anymore, which coming months we should get more clarity on that. But if that ruling comes true, that opens up a whole nother door for college sports, right? Because ultimately you could play 6 years of college sports. Granted, you could turn into 6 easily with a medical red shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the Prowler does. We try to lay it all out in a database for the athlete. Then our AI pursues those schools for the athlete on their X and Gmail. And it opens up doors, because these athletes don't realize how many schools are out there and what opportunities could be presented by them. Just like the kid that we were talking about before the podcast out in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. He never knew how many schools are in the South until he got incorporated in our service, and the doors were blown wide open. The same thing was with a player when I first launched this. He was a great player out of North Alabama, came from a small 2A school. He was getting offers all the way to Maine, California, Washington, even got one football opportunity to go play in Alaska. And that opportunity would have never been available if the Prowler wasn't pushing his name out there for him.
Right.
So that's what I love doing this for, man, is because you get to see a kid's life change. You get to see a kid, there is an opportunity for me. It's not just Division I is all, and a lot of kids think that's all there is. So, but, jump into our Prowler spotlight tonight, and we'll kind of highlight this real quick, is the offense that outsmarted everyone. We've hit it really hard tonight, but I just want to hit it again because it's had a big impact. But how has the Princeton offense, ultimately built to slow the game down, help shape the fast and fluid, space game that we see nowadays, as we see in Nate Oates? How do you think that ultimately evolved into what Nate Oates has created?
Well, I think it helped make it faster by playing slower early, to be honest with you, because the reason that they played slower early was there was no shot clock, and you can control the game that way. And as coaches, we tend to want to have control. and be able to dictate how things go on a given possession, almost like it's a Nintendo game or something like that, where you press A and this is going to happen, B this is going to happen, whatever. But we know life's not like that, and basketball is not like that. It's an organic thing that's going to continue to move and change, and it changes in a split second. So I think it made the decision making easier, back to the A or B decision that you have, as opposed to A through D or A through E. So that made it where you can play faster, and it's really counterintuitive. It's the less structure you give them, like I said, the skeleton, and more the muscles move, the better the offense tends to be. I went up to one of my buddies, coaches at a D3 in New York, Sean Smiley, and he when I went up there 2 years ago in January, they were last in the league in virtually every offensive category. Well, in 3 weeks, I kind of helped work with them while I was there, and he has continued to develop and grow the system that they're in. And this year they finished first in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and assists in his league. Awesome. And I think that he would credit the structure, the spacing, the angles and the movement, the timing. I think he would credit all of that with what we were able to put in those 3 weeks, and that they've been able to build on. He's kind of made it his own now and is doing a great job up there. But I think that's how it's helped make the game faster today. Is number one, it decreased the decision making so that they could learn how to play. And then 2, once they know how to play, you can let them play. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of what it does. While you're just going faster, you're trying to put as much pressure on the defense as you can, and that includes in transition. And then, okay, they stop me in transition. Now, how can I put more pressure on them and be fast about it? So I know Bucky always says he wants to take a shot in the first 7 seconds or in the last 10. And he's obviously had major success with that. Almost beat Kansas a year, not this past NCAA tournament, the NCAA tournament before that, doing it. And you got Bill Self saying he never wants to play against that again. Well, I think that's where it's going. I think that's where this version of the offense is going. I think that's where it's ultimately going to head is playing as fast as you can without turning the ball over, while making decisions as easy as they can be for the players.
No, for sure. And I definitely agree with that. And, we see with Chris Beard also at Ole Miss, he did it several times this year and people got frustrated with it. So,
yes.
But, jumping to our Prowler question of the day and pretty much to the end of our podcast today is I always ask a question to our guest. And this question is which aspect of the Princeton offense has had the biggest impact on today's game? And I was wanting your input. Number one option is spacing and floor balance, creating lanes and open shots, as we've talked about a lot. Backdoor cuts and constant off-ball movement, forcing defense to stay alert. Team-oriented and read and react style, prioritizing decision-making over isolation, and tempo control, slowing down faster opponents and dictating pace.
I think it's probably going to be spacing and floor balance. Just because I think that helps stretch and open up the gaps for you to drive it, for you to cut into it. The cuts also create gaps that you can drive it into or throw behinds and throw in. So I'm going to go spacing and floor balance for sure. I also think that just getting guys in spots can help you score. Just getting them in the right spots and not on top of each other can help get easy buckets that way, just by being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
No, I totally agree with that. And, talk about spacing and floor cutting. One of the best teams right now is Oklahoma City Thunder. They are doing it to a perfection.
They are.
And
they are.
That is kudos to Shea and Chet Holmgren, because those two right there have a chemistry that's unmatched right now. Mm-hmm. And I really, truly thought the Timberwolves, which I don't know what the score is right now, but I really, truly thought the Timberwolves were going to stand a better chance. But as we see, Ant can't do it all himself. So
can't do it all himself. No, not a one-man band anymore.
No, not at all. So, but closing it out, our weekly quote is by one of the greats, and I want to get your input on it as well before we close out, is I'm not asking you to surrender to me or thee me for thee we. What I'm asking to you to do is select the best from the rest, Jimmy Tillette. And what do you think he was meaning by that exactly?
I think what Coach meant by that is he wanted you to, whatever was best for the team, that's what you're going to do over whatever else is out there that you think's better. Okay, it's got to be team first. It's got to be about them. This particular quote, I think, is more about offensive shot selection. Is where I think this one came from. But he wanted us to get the best shot over the rest of the shots that are out there, because anybody can get a shot anytime they want. Okay,
Yep.
Anybody can go jack one. Okay, but we don't want the rest of the shots. We want the best shot we can get on that possession. And I think that's what he was talking about there is, it's not about me scoring. It's about Sanford scoring. At the end of the day, I don't care if I score or Jimmy Joe over there scores. As long as Sanford's ahead on the scoreboard, that's what everybody's going to remember.
No, correct. No, that's absolutely correct. And it's it just goes back to there's no I in the team. You got to play as a team. Whoever got the most open shot typically needs to be the one taking the shot at the time, because more open shot, the higher the percentage is. But coming to a close, do you have any closing remarks, Coach Wellborn?
I want to thank you for allowing me to be on the podcast. It's obviously a unique experience that we don't get to do every day. Obviously, anybody out there, you feel free to email me. My email is JLWEL, B as in boy, OR, at Sanford, SAMFORD.edu. Feel free to email me with any questions if you have any. I'm wide open. I love to talk basketball. So feel free to hit me up anytime. Anybody need anybody to do any kind of offensive consulting, look at what you're doing, see ways that could help you get more efficient, or anything like that. I've helped a bunch of high school guys this year, helped a couple of college guys this year. But I'm free and willing to work, and just love basketball and love helping kids. So also, if anybody wants an assistant, I'm here.
That's awesome, man. Well, they definitely could use you in a lot of places, so I'm sure you'll land in an amazing spot, and can't wait to hear that story continue. So,
yes, sir.
But thank you for tuning into the Prowler Podcast, and thank you, Jay, for sharing your insight and also making me more knowledgeable of the Princeton offense, because it's been a great talk. And we're beyond excited to continue expanding our knowledge and your knowledge of our platform, and partner with those who are truly serious about taking their game to the next level. And as always, stay connected, stay driven, keep pushing towards your dreams, and we can't wait to see what's next for you. And as always, Prowler up.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome, man. That was a great one.
Good deal, man. That was good. I like the little format you got set up here. That went really well.